Hello and welcome back to Stumpy Grump Scale Speed Shop, where I am working on the Revell 1966 Pontiac GTO. What I did first, what I always do first, is I sand down all the mold lines, smooth all those out. There's a little bit back here, and some of the sharp edges, I sand those down. Do all that first, then I deepen the panel lines, the trunk and the doors. Usually I did a little bit up here because there's stuff to do, so I do all that. And then, like I said, I get as many parts as I can cleaned up. The hood, especially the body parts, a little bit on the chassis, stuff like that. I do all that first. Then I give it a bath, the whole kit, all the parts, except the clear parts, in a sink full of Dawn dishwater. And I scrub it with a toothbrush. Now, this is a step you don't have to do. It gets a lot of argument. You don't have to do it. I do. To me, it's just extra insurance against any kind of paint snafu. The little bit of time it takes and effort to do it is just excellent insurance for me against anything bad happening with a paint job, you know. So, just my opinion. So I do that. Get all that set, let it dry overnight, all that good stuff. What I also did on this one is I drilled holes. This one has separate door handles for the outside, so I drilled a hole in there, and I drilled a hole in the back of the door handle, and I'll use a little thin wire to pop in there. Did that on both sides, and then I drilled a hole for the mirror, the same thing with the mirror and the side mirror. I'll do the same thing with that. I drilled holes also in the wheels for the valve stems. Next step I do is I do some sub-assemblies. All this stuff is going to be the same color. Well, the transmission's not, but all the stuff's the same color. So the block and transmission, bell housing, that's all one piece, two pieces actually. Then the oil pan goes on, covers up most of the seam, and then I just file or sand down to try to get rid of the rest of the seam on the transmission and the bell housing. Then on this particular engine, the heads and the intake and the engine cover and timing chain cover and water pump are all the same color. So all that's going to get primed and painted at the same time for ease, just easy to do. Also with the rear end, it's three pieces. This one big piece, then you have a lower piece, and then you have the rear differential cover. So those are three. They're all going to be black, so put that all together at the same time. To prime and paint at the same time, as well as the seats and the seat backs. Okay, that gets painted all at the same time as well. And then it gives you a chance. I'm not really going to do the seams on this one because it's back behind. You're not really going to see it once everything's together. But some of them you can get rid of this seam right here where they meet by sanding or filling with putty, whatever you want to do. But I'm not going to mess with it on this particular build because, like I say, the way this is designed, you're really not going to see it. Really not going to see it. So, and then the way these are designed with the slits in there for the interior, I just stick some styrene strip pieces in there to hold so I can paint. So that's what I've done so far. I am ready for primer. The body and interior, a lighter color body and interior, so I'm using Stynylrez neutral primer, which is more of a tan primer, more of a tan color. So I'm using that. Just shake it up real good. And for the rest of the parts over here, I'm going to use Stynylrez black for the chassis and exhaust, because that gets painted in a chromish color to make it look stainless steel. All this stuff's black or dark colored, so I'll use black primer with it. So that's the step I'm at right now, is the primer stage. And when I get it sprayed, I'll show you in a minute. But first, one little tip I have for the primer. This stuff comes airbrush ready. No thinning necessary. It says right on it. Shake extremely well before using. I put a steel ball in here, sometimes 2. This is a 4-ounce bottle. I bought a 6-pack of them and 6 different colors. It lasts me a long time so far. What I do though is I've learned through trial and error and experience, I get glycerin here, which can be found in the health and beauty section. It's by the isopropyl alcohol, not next to it, but it's in that same, should be in that same section. But it's glycerin. Okay, it's vegetable based. It's very slippery. And I put, this is a 4-ounce bottle, so I'll put 4 or 5 drops into this bottle. And it really helps with the leveling, and it helps against your airbrush tip drying. It helps prevent your airbrush tip from drying when you're spraying it. Okay, don't have to do it, just a tip. Try it. I've used this for quite a few of my thinner formulas and stuff like that, and I've barely even started using it. I've had it for a couple years, so stuff will last forever. But back to priming. I'm going to get this onto my paint stand, and some of these parts onto my water bottles and pop bottles that I have to tape on to paint, and I'll get sprayed, and we'll show you the results, what everything looks like in primer, in just a minute. Okay, I'm going to take a second, and also what I do is these water-based paints and stuff, the craft paints that I use, and the Createx even, the Steiner's primer, even with the glycerin in and stuff, they have a tendency to dry around the cap and such. So you want to keep that clean for starters. And what I do when I use them is I use a strainer. You can get these anywhere. Amazon has them, dollar store, whatever. You can get more fine strainers than this for your use. But I strain it and pour it into a cup, a little medicine cup. Usually pour more than what you might need, because you can always just pour it back into your bottle when you're done. No big deal. So that's what I do to help keep some of the dry clumps from clogging up the airbrush, because with water-based paints, admittedly that is a bit of an issue, so you want to make sure you keep that stuff strained. Okay, just a quick tip. So I've got everything sprayed into primer. Here's all the black parts that I did, mostly from the sprue, some suspension parts, all that. Steiner's black primer, 2 coats. Now for the neutral primer for the firewall and the interior parts, I'll set that aside because that's got to get painted body color. All this stuff, the engine, transmission, everything, door panels, and the seats, all ready for paint. The interior tub. What I will do is I will paint the seats the interior color, and then I'll tape over the seat, and then I will put in some embossing powder that I have. I'll be using white for this application. And once I get that in and it dries, I'll tape over the floor mat here, a little floor thing, little foot mat. I will tape everything off, put in my adhesive, and then pour on my embossing powder. I'll let it dry. Then I will spray the carpet color onto it. And yes, you can spray, you can paint over this embossing powder pretty easily. So I'll do that. that'll be in the next update. What I have done with the body here is it sprayed pretty smoothly. This Dynares primer sprays nice and smooth, but what I did is I took my micro mesh polishing pads. This is 2400 grit. I did not wet sand it. I just used it dry and just lightly sanded across the body, and now it is smooth as glass. I did that with the body and the hood, so it's smooth, ready for paint. So that's how I do that. The next step is going to be the paint, and that will be in the next update. So thanks for watching Stumpy Grump Scale Speed Shop. I'll see you in a few days.